it looks like we're recording. You should see a notification. You
Yeah,
may have seen it. Awesome.
yeah.
All right. So Daniel, great to have you here. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for inviting me. Maybe you can just quickly tell the viewers what the plan is for today and maybe how you reached out to me or why you reached out to me.
Sure. Well, hi everyone. My name is Daniel, and I'm from Toronto, Ontario. I recently graduated from Western University with a Bachelor of Science, and I'm here today to conduct an interview and ask questions regarding the Regulatory Affairs program because I am currently enrolled in a postgraduate program for Regulatory Affairs.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So really quick, can you just, how did you find me?
Okay, well, after I graduated from university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I did some research online and I actually searched up what jobs I can get with a Bachelor of Science degree.
Right.
And that's how I found your video, the 5 jobs you can get from with a Bachelor of Science degree. And then I found you out and I found out quality assurance and quality control positions. So I did more research on that, and then from the quality assurance research, I found out about the regulatory affairs profession, and then I saw more videos on your channel regarding regulatory affairs, and yeah, that's how I found about you.
Funny, the world of YouTube, hey?
Yeah,
That's great. Well, I'm glad we connected. And I believe
yeah,
you reached out as well over LinkedIn, like we connected over
yes,
LinkedIn, which is a great platform. So yeah, and you did your degree, you got a science degree. Can you say which one, like what did you major in
yeah.
particular, what stream?
Yes, I specialize in biology, and I minored in pharmacology.
Ah, very nice.
Yes,
And and so now you're going into regulatory affairs. Can
yes.
I like how you found it, or how did is it just through the YouTube videos, or what made you decide, okay, this is the program I want to get into, or did you look at other careers? Maybe just kind of tell people about that journey a little bit if you can.
Sure. So I found about regulatory affairs from the YouTube video. So I did more research on it, and I found that this career progression combines both regulatory requirements and clinical research, um, and ultimately takes into account patient safety. So it's kind of like a combination of healthcare and business in the pharmaceutical industry, which is the industry I wanted to go into.
Mhm.
So I was like, this is the perfect career for me. So I searched up job postings, and under the qualifications, it said that having a postgraduate certificate was an asset. So then I searched up postgraduate certificate programs near me, and I found a college near me that specialized in pharmaceutical regulatory affairs and had a co-op program, and
Oh, good.
that's where I'm at now. Yeah.
That's awesome. How are you liking it so far? Is it the first semester? Are you in your first semester
Yes.
now? Like, okay. And
So
so
I'm in
far,
my
how's it?
so I'm in my first semester now. It's been 2 weeks, and so far I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, it's kind of assignment heavy, but there's a stream where I have my own mentor that helps me find a job in this field. So it's
Oh,
going good so
good.
far.
That sounds like a really good program. Like they're actually trying
Yeah,
to get you a job after. And do you know what you want to do? Like what industry you want to get into, or what specialty?
yeah. So this program it can you can either go into the industry, pharmaceuticals, or Health Canada route. And for me, I'm more interested in the pharmaceutical industry. So I just want to be like a regulatory affairs associate, just in the big pharma like Johnson Johnson, Bayer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said that the program you could also go through like government agencies, so
Yes.
such as Health Canada. That's what you mean? Oh, very
Yes.
cool. Very interesting. You're Canadian.
Yes.
Okay, me too. Just for the viewers in case they're
Yeah.
wondering. Good. So we're doing the interview today. We're going to talk about regulatory affairs a little bit. I believe you have a whole bunch of questions. Maybe we can just get
Yes.
to it.
Sure. So I'll
Great.
start off with the first question. What is your academic background, and do you feel that it has adequately prepared you for your position?
Yeah, I think it's important to also clarify. Like, I don't know in your program if it's primarily pharmaceutical. So my background, like career-wise, specializes in dietary supplements, foods, natural health products, not necessarily pharmaceuticals, biotech. That's a completely different world. But I mean, the principles and the tasks, right? Like the skill sets, there's a lot of overlap there. But I think it's important just to call that out for background. So my education background, bachelor's of science, just like yourself, cell and molecular biology. And then what happened was Health Canada put in these new regulations. This is back in 2004 for natural health products. So this was brand spanking new. Nobody knew really what it entailed. It was really roughly put together by the government. They didn't even know how to interpret a lot of the regulations themselves. So they were putting out guidance documents, and there was a lot of questions coming out of that. So I think I was best prepared as best as one could be with a bachelor's degree. This was just uncharted territory. Even the companies that were bringing me in, they were like, "You're the expert now. We don't really know what to do. Let's see what you bring to the table." That was pretty much the big thing, and I did that through a co-op program. So having a co-op program, having that work experience prior also helps, so that once you're out of school, you're in a much better situation. But I think we were just going into uncharted territory. It was the best we got. But in terms of skill sets, they wanted you to read journal articles. You needed to know how to use these databases. You had to understand what these journal articles were saying. So yeah, the degree obviously prepped you for that. You were critiquing, you were reading a lot of these scientific journals. So from that standpoint, I thought it did a good job. But like I said, not specific to the regulatory submission side. That's kind of learning as you're going, especially in that climate at that time.
Wow, okay. Sounds interesting. But yeah, my program also deals with all types of pharmaceutical, medical devices, and
Good.
diet part of it as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
Next question. Regulatory affairs is not a career that's widely known, even among those that have exposure to the pharmaceutical industry. So, what exposure did you have to the field prior to entering it, and how did it ultimately become your career choice?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about regulatory affairs. I think maybe you were in the same boat too. I think
Yeah.
back then there wasn't much of a YouTube resource, and I remember that last semester or two where I was like, okay, what are the career options out there? And I was starting to talk to my professors and all these career services people in the universities. They didn't bring it up either, which was interesting. And to me, like looking back, I think it just goes to show how limited the scope of options they're aware of as well. Like they're thinking about teaching, they're thinking about working in biotech, either in sales or pharmaceuticals. So it was very the conventional type of jobs. I didn't know anything about regulatory affairs. The only reason why I got exposed to it was because of the co-op program and Health Canada putting these new regulations out. So I, to a certain degree, stumbled upon it. But then as I was doing some digging, and here I'm located in Vancouver. At that time, biotech was it was prior to that time. It was like it was doing this. It was doing very very well. But around the time that I was graduating, looking at career options, it started to plateau, and a lot of companies were starting to actually shut down. It wasn't doing so great at that time, and I was networking with a lot of people in that industry. Um, and so I was like, from a trajectory standpoint, from a career standpoint, let's see where regulatory affairs goes, and that's essentially where I went and stuck with it. And I was very fortunate enough to be in a company um, that obviously gave me that opportunity after co-op, but in a company that could afford to put these regulations in place, that understood, the requirements, like the investment of the requirements. I think there were a lot of companies that got hit hard because with any regulations, it's costly. It slows people down. The idea is you can't go to market unless you have the approval from the government, and the approval at the time took several months. I'm talking probably more like several years. So it was just, there was so much uncertainty. A lot of companies just couldn't survive that. And I was very fortunate enough to be in a large organization at the time to do that. And at the same time, climb that corporate ladder. So that's kind of how I got into regulatory affairs.
Great. Which direction do you see your career path going?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, I think it's, I think it's really cool in the sense that at first it's niched, right? It's
Yeah.
regulatory affairs, it's all submissions, it's looking at marketing. That said, there's a lot of variety in there. I think we'll talk about that later, but I think there's a lot of variety in the day to day, which is nice. But in my career path, what was really cool is like once you hit a certain level of expertise, people want you can expand into other areas. So in my career path, yeah, I was known for regulatory affairs, and it got my foot in the door into these various organizations. But then these organizations realize, oh, there's value in XYZ person or person, right? Whoever, or Brian, and then they're like, let's put him in a different role, in particular QA, compliance, that type of thing. So now you're moving into a completely different world that is outside regulatory affairs, but it's good to have that foundation, right? With regulatory affairs, you've got like, you know what the rules of the game is, right? You know what that is. A lot of people that go into QA compliance, they should know the regulations, but a lot of them don't. And so they're kind of just eyeballing it. They don't really, it's hard for them to separate the needs from the wants. Whereas for a regulatory affairs person, well, you know the regulations; those are the needs. Like it's that simple. And of course, I'm generalizing, but it just gives you a sense. So yeah, you can expand out of that role altogether in time. And I know that there's new industries, at least in Canada, like for example CBD, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. So you can move into that. You can take what you've learned. They understand the transferable skills. You can move into that. There's the new like the psychedelics, like microdosing of psychedelics. There's companies starting out in that realm that are going to be looking for people like yourself coming from a more classical industry, but you've got the transferable skills, you've got the understanding. They could definitely use you. 10 years from now, when psychedelics is new. You're right; it's a very, very controversial, right, hot topic. But I think in time, you never know where that goes, how accepted that might be, and they're going to need people like you. So you do have a lot of room to play. So that I don't know. That's just my experience. But yeah, if you're going the classical route, pharmaceuticals, yeah, you're going to be specializing. You're going to be a subject matter expert, and you're just going to be the one they go to and rely on to get the approvals, right? And to understand like how to build these products so that the approvals happen smoother.
Okay, great. And if you could do it all over again, would you still choose the same career path?
Uh, Difficult to say. I think in one respect, if I were to look back and like if I could repeat it and like go back to when I was, mid 20s or whatever it was, or early 20s, I would probably say I would choose the same path. And because this path has afforded me the luxury of exploring other options, it's obviously created a life that I'm super happy with. And at the same time, like there was no competition, right? Like there was relatively lower competition than say marketing or sales, like all the conventional stuff. Um, and that was a place that you could specialize and flourish, right? People then they know you. It's an easy brand to tack onto your name. People associate that skill set with your name right away. So from that standpoint, it's good. But I mean, if I fast forward to now where I'm at, values change over time. What is important to me is different than what it was 20 years ago. So, your desires or whatever your goals career-wise always change. So it's hard to say if I would choose the exact same one, but if like knowing what I know now, but from looking, if I were to just clean my brain and just go back, back to my early 20s, I would say, yeah, that was definitely worth doing over again.
Okay, good. So what do you find most enjoyable about your job, and what do you find least enjoyable about your job?
Yeah, the most enjoyable part for me was the fact that you get to work with people. There's a lot of diversity in your day-to-day role, or the fact that you're working with different departments as well. You got a lot of diversity in your scope of responsibilities too. So you're not just looking at submissions, but you're doing marketing review. You're helping R&D. You're establishing the processes involved for regulatory submissions or for label creation or for marketing creation. So you're involved in all these things because they need to know what the regulations are, right? They need to have an understanding of what that limit is for them from a risk tolerance or from what they can say or can't say. So you have that diversity. and I just enjoy working with people on other teams, right? From that standpoint. So that I love. The least enjoyable parts, I would say, is probably the grunt work. When I first got started, this is normal, right? With any job, you're just reading journal articles, you're looking at data constantly, you're trying to analyze it, you're putting all these submissions together, and you're writing reports. So I think my own nature is like I like working with people. That was more project oriented, and yeah, you're still doing that with your team, and it taught me a lot of really good skills that I would obviously need later. So I don't regret doing that stuff, but I mean, you do like 100 submissions, you're like, okay, 101 doesn't feel as fun anymore. But that's with any job. And then the other thing too, that I find least enjoyable is just there's some companies out there that don't appreciate regulations, they don't appreciate the requirements or the value that it brings, or they just don't understand or see it. So a lot of, there are some companies, I'm not gonna say a lot, but there are some companies that are resistant to change, or they're resistant to complying. They'll do the bare minimum, and sometimes the bare minimum isn't ideal, right? And some companies that I've seen, not that I've worked directly with, don't even go that far just because they see regulations as a hindrance. And working with that type of clientele, if you will, isn't going to be a fun day, right? Like they're essentially they don't believe in the work you do, or they see you as a cost that they have to just put up with. That's just not a fun environment at all. I don't think you're going to see this type of philosophy in your large pharmaceutical companies or biotech companies at all, but I have seen it in other industries.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that drew me into the field as well, that you can work with multiple departments. So, yeah.
Did you look at other jobs at all? Like what other jobs other than regulatory affairs, or was that the big one for you?
Oh, I saw quality assurance, quality control as well, but I really wanted to stick into with the pharmaceutical industry, and I really wanted to do something that I feel like has a purpose. Like it because this takes into account patient safety, and it combines like I said, the business and the regulations with the clinical side. And I have a background in the clinical side, so that's why I found that this would be great for me.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Like going back to what I found enjoyable, I think that's part of it too. You can really feel that link between how you contribute to the business, right? There are some other roles, I'm sure, in a company. It's harder to get that sense, whereas regulatory affairs can be a make or break. I mean, if your submissions are crap, you can really hurt a company. But I mean, I think that because you're associated, you can see that connection. It definitely gives that more of a purpose, right? I found
Yeah.
that as well, and I think that really helped.
Yeah. So would you say that there's a general sense of job satisfaction among your coworkers?
Yeah, well, it depends. It depends on who the coworker is. It comes down to the individual, like their strengths, right? Some people are very project oriented. Some people have a really low risk tolerance compared to where the business wants to go. Right. So, or maybe the data set that you're dealing with isn't as great as as great as you like. Some
Yeah.
people have difficulties working with that information or working in that type of environment, and to them, I suspect that the environment isn't ideal, or that job satisfaction isn't really there. But I will say in my experience, I would lean towards, yeah, like for me, I definitely had it. My coworkers or the teams that I managed, I felt that they did for sure. I would say so. I can't speak for them individually, but through the performance reviews and all the one-on-ones, I definitely got that impression. Right. But yeah, there's the work from that standpoint. It felt good, satisfaction there. But then there's always the element of the right company, the right culture, the right environment, the team, the departments that you're working with, the teams that you're working with, right? If you're working with negative people, that's obviously going to hurt job satisfaction, but it's definitely outside the realm of regulatory affairs, if that makes sense. But overall, I think not bad.
Okay, great. What abilities or characteristics would you say are most important to be successful in this job?
Yeah, obviously you need to know how to read the regulations, like and or well, and where to go for the regulations. Some people actually have them memorized, or they're so exposed to it that they know, right, the language behind it, which is great. But as long as you know where to go and how to read it, that's obviously key. But also interpretation. And when I say interpretation, it's twofold. I think a lot of us, we interpret it from, you know, our mentors, our managers, maybe our teachers or professors, but also you want to look at, well, how is the government interpreting the regulations? Sometimes they put out these guidance documents, or they change their position. They'll publish guidance documents, and then 6 months later, reinterpret things when they're actually enforcing it, or when they're reviewing your submission, which isn't in line. You see that a lot. So that's important to understand. Okay, well, how are they doing it? Or how do they see the regulations? Or how do they interpret their own interpretation sometimes? But then there's the other flip side, which is the legal interpretation and the industry practice. So there are lawsuits that happen. There are companies that are defending themselves, or there's new judgments or precedents set from these judgments or settlements. So it's important to see, okay, how are these judges or how are these lawyers interpreting the language from actual decisions made in court? So it's also good to understand that point of view, not just, reading the regulations word for word, or not just understanding how the government interprets it, because sometimes the government doesn't interpret it well, or they've misinterpreted it as well, or they overstretched their scope of power, if you will, or overinterpreted or overregulated it in its interpretation, if that makes sense. So it's nice to have those different viewpoints. So it's important to have that. Obviously, you want to have a good relationship with government officials. You're going to be talking to these people. They do offer a lot of pre-submission meetings, right? So you want to, before you even start your submission, or maybe you want to talk through a concept, or just look at your data set and see where you stack up. You can have these pre-submission meetings with Health Canada, for example. So you want to have a good relationship. You want to get those meetings in on time. You want to have, you want them to respond to your emails. You might have a quick question. You're like, hey, you guys said this, but what did you mean by that? You want them to respond to those things quickly. So having that good relationship is really helpful, and not be mad at them when they don't get back to you, that type of thing. We've talked about team player, because you're working with so many different departments. That's obviously a must. And then on top of it, communication skills. So I'm talking about written communication skills, lots of emails, report writing, of course, oral. So if you're on telephone, if you're on Zoom, all those things matter, right? I think, yeah. And then the last one is your company's risk tolerance. So obviously, if you're starting out, it's going to be hard for you to see that right off the gate, but it's important to work with your boss, with your supervisor, manager, to get a sense of what a company's risk tolerance is. Some companies, then depending on the product, they have a high risk tolerance. Others, not so much. It's an innovative drug, or it's the first time, or it's a high profile type drug, or device. With very little information out there. So, it really depends. And then based on that, you kind of know what you need to do, or how to put your submissions together. That, I think all of that together kind of helps, hopefully it gives you a sense of what kind of characteristics you're going to need.
For sure. Yeah. So what would you say, you mentioned communication. What would you say were the most important communication tasks and documents in the job?
Yeah, obviously, like emails, meetings. So you're going to be talking to your counterparts. You may be talking to your bosses, or reporting into higher ups. So you have to know how to present. That's absolutely key. Government communication, knowing how to talk to those guys, and phone call etiquette. I think those are the basics, probably in any role, but also important here. And then in terms of documentation, any GMP, good manufacturing practice, controlled documents, clinical, preclinical data, journal articles, change controls, things like stability data, all the stuff that you're going to need to put your submissions together. These are all important information that you're going to have to handle, interpret, and also go to the experts for their interpretation, but at least have that foundation to understand what they're talking about, so you can put the submissions together, and also give them guidance when they are trying to design their study, or they're trying to design their protocols. yeah, so I think that's super important. And then obviously report writing. So your written communication skills are key. It's really easy to be technical, but right, you have to also remember sometimes the people reading your reports don't have the same technical expertise. So you have to write at a specific level that you get the information that you need to get out, but in a way that they actually understand.
Okay. Um, would you recommend becoming a member of a regulatory affairs association? And which one would be the most helpful? So some are CAPRA, RAPS, and PSG.
Yeah, are you a member right now?
No, but my program has touched on RAPS, and they said that we could be a member and it would be beneficial as there's job postings there as well.
Yeah, I would. I mean, in my opinion, there's a couple things. Number one is you need to know what industry you want to get into, who your target market is. So let's say the company is only dealing with Japan, right? Like they only sell to the Japanese market or the US market or the Canadian market or a combination of them. So it's important to understand that because I think like PSG and CAPRA, I think they're more Canadian centric. So that's number one. That's important to know. Um, and then you could also look at the companies that are members. There might be companies that are in that list that you want to work for. So there could be a desire for you to sign up from that point of view. And then I think you did some really good, you mentioned something really important in your job search. You're looking at the requirements. Some do say that they are looking for someone with, that membership or certification from that particular member. So that's important to have, or it could be important depending on the type of companies you've been finding in your search. And then lastly, I think it's cheaper for students, right? So if it's a minimal cost to you, and you can attend these events and get that networking in, um, go for it, try it out, and at the same time know that you can always exit. If you're not finding that value, you could always leave. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to hurt you. It just really comes down to the monetary side of things for you, as well as can you even attend these events just time wise? Are they throwing so too many assignments that you can't even attend? Um, but if you can, I say why not take advantage of it, um, as long as it makes sense for your industry.
Yeah. Yeah, the events right now I think are virtual, so it wouldn't be that much of a hassle to attend them at all. So
Right.
yeah.
That's right. I keep forgetting.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting. I was in a different committee like years ago, and they would have these breakfast sessions or lunch sessions. So you go in and see the guest speakers, and then you would have all these. You would sit in a round table with all these other industry members. So that was really cool because then you could actually talk to them, chat with them during the breaks, and get their business card. And so I thought that was really cool. But I keep forgetting that
Mhm.
everything is virtual now.
Yeah. I've been told that it takes about 2 years before one is truly comfortable with filing out a particular type of submission. Would you say that this would be an accurate assessment, like 2 years to file a particular type of submission?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
2 years, and then, right, you want to give yourself, um, time not to just know how to put the submission together and be comfortable with it, but also look at, okay, well, how can I improve things? And right, how can I improve things? How can I make it more efficient? How can I provide other better value or feedback to my other departments? And that just takes time, right? They're not going to listen to you if you're 6 months in. Right. So if you've got 2 years under your belt, you've got some clout, and you also understand the current day-to-day operations enough where you can identify some opportunities for improvement, perhaps. So I'd say 2 years is about right, and at the same time, it's a company will value having you for 2 years. I think it's easy for us to jump ship, a year and a half, move on, we're bored after a year, move on to another company. Yeah, you get a bump in pay. So that could be the most alluring or most meaningful part for you. And for others, it's about, okay, adding that value to the company, making an impact there, then in time moving on. But yeah, I would say 2 years is a good number, just generally speaking, not just for regular affairs, but for any job. Put in your 2 years, really understand the role, make some changes, maybe leave a bit of a legacy, and then move on.
Yeah. Aside from the types of submissions, what would you say are the differences between working for an innovator or a generic company?
Um, so again, I'm coming from a food, dietary supplement, natural health product background, and so I've worked in organizations where you had some that they're breaking into new space, they're using brand new ingredients, they're trying to go after a completely different type of ingredient or different delivery system. And then there's the other side of the business, which is all about copying what the competitors are doing, grabbing a similar ingredient, putting your own spin to it, but not really doing anything too innovative. And in my experience, I think I found it more exciting to go with the innovation side. It's riskier, right? You don't know what's going to happen or if the market even wants it, right? There's going to be market research and all those things, but at the end of the day, you never really know. Um, and I think from an innovation standpoint too, it's more tangible of an idea that all departments in a company can rally behind versus trying to do a copycat product or the generic side of things. Right, just making straight multivitamins with like a no-name brand type of thing. It's just, you're just copying a formula and that's it. Right, of course the mission makes sense. You want to build the business, you want to get sales and break through different channels, but there's just something more fun and exciting to me when it's brand new space, innovation space. And like I said, a lot of people can rally behind it. So you get the support from the teams. If you need different types of data, if you need more studies done, if you feel that there's something missing, they'll probably be more likely to listen to you versus a generic situation, copycat products like, hey, the product's already out. Like they've done it. Why can't let's just do it our way? And they just want to get it out there as fast as possible, if that makes sense. Um, but that's just me. I think, in I'm assuming in the pharmaceutical industry, there's a lot more risk involved. Playing it safe is actually a better thing, right? The regulatory requirements is less for a generic standpoint than say the more innovative standpoint, and it's a lot of pressure for these companies to get these drugs out. And if there's any hiccups, it's on you, right? So, uh, it comes down to maybe your own comfort level, your style, what what drives you, that type of thing as well. But that's, that was just my own experience.
Okay. And what are the salary ranges for this field?
Yeah, I would say like, and I say this very cautiously because every industry is different, and even within the industry, depending on the company size, the revenue that they have, it's all different. Like, a company that's making $500 million will pay a different salary than a company that's making $10 million. Same title, even same responsibilities, but they just can't afford, right? Like the affordability is different. So generally, I would say starting salary probably 60K, that type of range. I would say probably a little bit higher if you're going for like the bigger companies, but this is just 50K, that mid range to start. You got no experience, they don't know you, they're trying to suss you out and teach you and all these things. But then as you climb easily over six figures, if you've done any digging on like a director of regulatory affairs in the pharmaceutical role or a VP, you're in like what, $200,000 range ish. Like, and I'm being very, very general here. Don't hopefully you take this with a grain of salt, but it gives you an idea of what your salary potential could be.
Okay, great. Um, what is the current job market like? With other colleges starting now to offer regulatory affairs programs, do you think that this field may become oversaturated?
Um, it could. I do see an uptick in regulatory affairs. There's a lot of people that come to me because of the YouTube videos now. You see a lot of colleges offering programs. So I think people are catching on to this job opportunity and seeing it. And I will say that, starting out, finding the right opportunity is not easy, right? There's only so many entry level positions available in a company. Um, but I will say that there is a lot of opportunity once you get past that entry level piece. There's a lot of companies out there looking for regulatory affairs specialists, managers, associates, directors. Like there's definitely a need for them, and the fact that they've never had any formal training before, right? Like these, a lot of people just come in, they kind of make their way through work experience and learn as they go. It's nice to see people have that formal training, formal education, and have more consistency with the execution side of things as well. I don't know. I think that in time it could get saturated, but right now I don't think we're there yet. I think there's still a lot of runway left, but you're definitely seeing a trend moving in that direction.
Okay. Um, what is the most important piece of advice you would give to someone who's looking for a job as a regulatory affairs associate?
I think what you did, which is just start looking for jobs like as soon as you can, get a really good sense of what the requirements are, what kind of companies you want to work for, and then also build your LinkedIn. So, right, build your LinkedIn network, build your LinkedIn profile, position your profile as if you're a regulatory affairs professional, right? So that recruiters, people that stumble upon your LinkedIn profile, they get to know you, they'll connect with you, and that's, you just want to be top of mind. That's really what it comes down to from a networking standpoint. And then you can do informational interviews. Like I think it's just a matter of doing all that homework before you finish your program would be good, so that as soon as you're done, you've got some people to talk to. You've got some people that they can introduce you to other contacts, for example, which could help you in your job. But I think just getting a sense of what the requirements are is super important.
Okay, great. So as I said, my program has a co-op option, and sooner than later, I'm going to be actually going to have to consider a job offer, right? So, what do you think are things that I should be looking for?
I would, if you can, go to like a big company. Like if you can. I don't know what the internship opportunities are at this point, but
Mhm.
ideally you want to go with the most reputable name. You can possibly get into the biggest brands. Those speak volumes. Just having that name, a J&J, a Pfizer on your resume speaks
Mhm.
so much right off the bat. A recruiter sees that, boom, you've already got an advantage. So that's ideal. And if not them, you just want to find something that gives you, then it's all about collecting skills, right? Just understanding, okay, how do I put these submissions together? Who's going to give me the most training? That type of thing. That's really what you want to be looking for. Um, yeah, I think that's the biggest one. But if you can get into that, like a name brand reputable company, even if you're not doing the best, the most fun stuff, I would argue that that's probably still ideal. And then you also learn, like, these big companies, they have established processes. They've got the right culture and mindset ideally. So you can take that to a smaller company in time, right? Like once you finish your internship, most likely you'll get into a smaller company, right? And you can take that learning with you and inject that into this new organization, and I'm sure they'd appreciate that.
Yeah, you would be bringing value to a smaller company.
Yeah, yeah.
And lastly, is there anything else you would like to add about the profession that may have missed?
um no, I don't think so. I think I yeah I, th- that was I think we touched on a lot of the stuff. I don't think so. I think the big one was just, yeah, looking at the legal side of things, like looking understand like industry practice, like what's happening in the industry, what's the interpretation, what's everyone else doing. Don't forget to follow those guys. You follow your competitors. Um, yeah, I think that'd be big. Don't like don't try to have you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. If you're dealing with a new submission, you can always see, okay, what are other people doing in other countries? What are people doing in other industries? How can I leverage that? How can I copy that? Um, you know, I think there's something there, but I think otherwise we've hit it pretty good. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you said, like keeping up to date with guidelines because they're always constantly changing is also a key thing. So
Hmm.
that's it. Thank you so much for attending this interview.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. So what happens now? Like, what do you do with this information?
Well, now I have to write like a formal report, I take your answers and I write a report on it, and yeah, I just hand it in to my professor.
Awesome. Well, hopefully it does well. Let me know how it goes.
All right, perfect. Thank you so
All right,
much.
man. I'll talk to you
All
later.
right, all right.
Cheers.
Have a good one. Bye.
See you. Bye now.
Bye.
So, Daniel, let me just stop this.